Hello chess enthusiasts, my name is Micha and welcome to my Chess Realm YouTube channel. So today I want to show you a game between Gilles Androuet and Boris Spassky, who died 2 months ago, so rest in peace champs. Let's see what happened in the game. Gilles Androuet had white pieces and he started with d4, knight to f6, c4, e6, knight to f3 and bishop to b4 check, and we have Bogo Indian defense. White plays bishop goes to d2, bishop captures on d2, queen recaptures on d2, and now d5 and knight to c3. Natural developing moves followed, of course. Black castles king side, e3, queen goes to e7, rook goes to c1, and rook to d8, extraying white queen on the file, so queen goes to c2, knight from b goes to d7, c pawn captures on d5, e pawn recaptures on d5, and now bishop to d3, targeting this h7 pawn, so black plays knight to f8, further reinforcing this h7 square, and white continues with knight to e2, c6, white castles king side, knight goes to g6, knight goes to g3, rook goes to e8, and queen to c5. Offering the trade of queens, removing the most dangerous pieces, but tactical genius Spassky doesn't go for it and plays queen goes to d8, and white continues with knight to d2, knight goes to h4, and now b4. So white starts the action on the queen side, threatening with b5, opening the files. So a6 was played, preventing immediate b5 strike, but white plays a4, putting more pressure on b5 square. Bishop goes to d7, further defending, and now rook to b1. So white is putting all of his resources to attack this b5 square, and now black plays knight to g4. So black is gathering pieces around white king, but white shouldn't worry. White could have simply played b5 as his initial plan was, but white plays queen to c2, again targeting this h7 square, which is currently unprotected. So g6 was played, and now b5. A pawn captures on b5, a pawn recaptures on b5, and now h5, supporting knight on g4, and now white opens files with b pawn captures on c6. B pawn, of course, recaptures on g6. Well, here maybe the best option would be rook to b3. After rook to b3, bishop on d3 is supported, and you'll see later why is that important. And also preparing maybe a rook to b1, doubling the rook along the b file. But white saw the things otherwise, and white plays rook from f goes to e1, apparently further supporting this e3 pawn, although there aren't any good sacrifices that black could make at this moment here with this e3 pawn. Black, however, had a very interesting move here at his disposal, and that is knight would capture on g2. If knight captures on g2, then yeah, queen to h4 and queen to h3 or h2 is the threat. So after king would capture on g2, then h4 would probably follow, and white would have to be very careful here and would probably have to give his knight back by playing e4, for example. Because if, for example, white removes knight to f1, then queen to g5, and here white would have to place the knight back on g3, allowing black to capture. Because after a random move, let's say rook from b to c1, then knight to e3, discover check. After king to h1, queen to g2, it's checkmate. And after king to f3, then it's bishop to g4 is checkmate. And let's consider this option if white removes the knight to e2. Then rook would capture on e3, and this is a very strong move. If f-pawn recaptures, then knight would capture on e3. It's double check on king and the queen. And if, for example, f3, then h3 is another strong move. If king would capture on h3, then rook would capture on d3. Of course, queen cannot recapture because knight to f2 again is a double attack on king and the queen. And if, for example, king would go to g1, then queen to g5, preparing this cover attack. Well, black definitely has a strong, almost decisive attack here. I cannot go through all the variations, but black is almost winning here. For example, knight to g3, protecting this cover check. Then rook from a to e8, rook to e3, queen to e3, king to h1, knight to f2, king to g1, and knight to d3. Well, if king f1, then queen to f2 mates. And if king to h1, then queen to f2 again. Black is going to mate in a couple of moves, and there is nothing white can do about it. Okay, let's go back to our game. So here in this position, queen to f6 was played, targeting defenseless pawn on f2, so knight goes to f1. Now queen is protecting f2 square, and now black plays rook to a3. Black is preparing to grab this bishop on d3, and of course queen couldn't recapture because it has to protect this pawn on f2. So rook to e2 was played for the protecting, and now black plays c5. And we are approaching the critical moment in this game. Black is trying to get rid of this d4 pawn, the only defender of e5 square. And maybe the best option for white here would be to play bishop to b5, forcing black to trade bishops, removing some material and attacking potential of black pieces. Well, white is probably not sensing that black has a slight attacking edge here. Queen, of course, cannot capture on c5 because it has to protect the bishop. So in the game, d pawn captures on c5 was played, and that was a fatal blunder. Now black plays knight goes to e5, double attack on this bishop on d3. Well, white is not realizing in what kind of trouble he is. Bishop to b5 was played. White is hoping to trade the material, but it's too late. Black strikes with a spectacular queen sacrifice. Queen goes to f3, threatening queen to g2 with checkmate. Well, g2 square cannot be protected, so white can only capture if, for example, g pawn would capture on f3, then knight from e goes to f3 check. King can only go to h1, and then bishop would go to h3. Black is going to play bishop to g2 with checkmate, and there is literally nothing that white can do to stop it. And therefore, in this position, Gilles Androuet resigned the game. So I hope you liked this game. I hope you have learned something from it. If you have any questions, my email is below in the description. Of course, I invite you to visit my Instagram page. That's it for now, and see you soon.